This year's early spring could mean trouble for the dozens of vineyards and various crops that call the Willamette Valley home. Sure, this warmer weather has been a welcome treat for locals, but the atypical temperatures could also threaten our agricultural community. We have team coverage of this today. We'll check with Joe English for a closer look at our March numbers. But let's begin with K2's Corey Marshall and winemakers who are preparing for the worst. Corey, we're talking about what happens if this warmer weather takes a turn.
Yeah, that's right, Anna. The vines behind me actually already have little bud breaks on them, and typically that doesn't happen until the second or third week of April. You might be wondering, well, what's wrong with that? Well, the winemakers I spoke to say pair the early budding with any potential drop in temperature, and that could essentially wipe out crops.
Oh, man.
The tasting room at Montinore Estate is packed with wine connoisseurs, both casual tasters and those well-versed in all things vino.
Yeah, you're welcome.
They're sampling the product of past seasons. Each vintage brings its own unique qualities, a lot of which depends on the mood of Mother Nature.
This is recently released, also kind of a funky year. 13 was really hot and really dry, and then right before we decided to pick grapes, we had 3 weeks of rain.
This year, that's especially true.
Too early to say what could happen, but it's kind of scary.
Jim Fisher has been around winemaking for most of his adult life.
It is a family business. Yep, absolutely.
Today, he's moonlighting at Montinore, but most of the time you can find him making wine under his own label, Fossil and Fawn, or co-managing family-owned Crowley Station vineyards.
So right there, everything is contained inside that. And if this were to die, then all of the fruit that's contained therein would also go with it.
Fisher says the early spring brings a lot of unknowns. For one, a spring frost could potentially wipe out the crops. You see, this wouldn't be a worry if the vines weren't already budding.
We need to have fruit to make wine. And if there's a frost, who knows? We might not have any fruit.
And with the warmer weather comes insects. Mosquitoes are already out in March.
How do we deal with these issues is something that we're going to have to be planning for going forward.
That's the worst case scenario, he says. Still, he takes comfort in a simple, solitary motto. Good
grape growers will always make good grapes, and good winemakers will always make good wine.
It's up to the weather to predict how much. Now, Fisher tells me that the insects will likely have an effect on other crops, too. We're talking about berries especially. Now, they won't know how much fruit these crops here produce until about late June. We're live in Forest Grove. Corey Marshall, K2 News.
Interesting perspective there, Corey, from him. Thank you. Let's get